27th January 2024 was when I purchased my iPad. Now, I had set out with a budget of 30,000 rupees or roughly $350. However, I ended up spending north of 83,000 rupees or almost $1,000. And almost as if it was totally not irresponsible to go 2.5x over budget for the iPad, Apple also cleverly sold me a bunch of accessories. In this video, I'm going to break down a couple of ways in which Apple tactfully blurs the lines between competing fairly and outright exploitation. Oftentimes we say that Apple is one of the most valuable tech companies in the world. However, I believe that there is a long due rephrasing that is necessary for this line. Apple is in fact one of the most predatory consumer tech companies in the world. So first we'll talk about the exploitation at the employee level, and then we'll move on to how it affects the consumers. And more importantly, if you are an Indian viewer, please watch this video till the end, because while Apple is growing its operations in India, there is a dark side to it. Now, if you look at Apple and one of its biggest competitors, Samsung, and compare their operating margins, meaning what profit are they able to generate from their core operations, you would see that Apple stands at a whopping 31.2% as of the June 2024 quarter, while one of its biggest rivals, Samsung, is at just 13%. This is a difference of almost 2.5x. What does this point towards? The fact that Apple is able to command a premium for their products and at the same time also optimize their supply chain. Apple is able to keep costs low while being able to generate high levels of revenue. The revenue part is where Apple's everyday customers like you and me and their B2B customers are being exploited, and the cost part is where labor is facing some serious crises. Now let me ask you a question. Where is Apple from? You would say from the United States. Apple is an American company. However, ironically, only one of all the products that Apple sells is manufactured in the US. Everything else is manufactured either in China or India. Nearly 95% of Apple's manufacturing happens in China, and one of their biggest contract-based manufacturers is this company named Foxconn. Now, Foxconn is a Chinese company which has operations in both China and India. And this is where it gets extremely dark, because Apple as a company continues to champion issues like climate change, sustainable development, and an inclusive work environment. But Foxconn's realities say something else. Till date, there have been not one but 14 incidents related to suicide at the Foxconn plants, citing horrible work environments.
The father of the recent factory worker who leapt to his death says there is no recourse and nowhere he can go for help.
People are underpaid, they are made to work extensively long hours in poor safety conditions, and on top of that, the social environment at these Foxconn facilities haven't been great either. There have been countless instances of racism between mainland Chinese and Taiwanese workers.
Foxconn is a Taiwanese company, but most of its manufacturing happens in China. Tensions between China and Taiwan have been growing for a while, and it appears that Foxconn is now caught in the crossfire.
If you look at Foxconn's operations in India, then you would notice that almost 40% of all the employment that Apple creates in India via contract manufacturing happens through Foxconn. And the messed up situation is that in the state of Karnataka, where Foxconn operates a facility, Apple and Foxconn both successfully lobbied for 12-hour work weeks so that women could work night shifts. This is a facility where women are paid between 82 and 102 rupees for each hour that they work. And the messed up part is that Foxconn also allegedly avoided hiring married women. When questioned about this, Foxconn subtly just removed the advertisements where they had mentioned that they are only looking for candidates who are unmarried. When these instances of suicides at the Foxconn facilities, racism, messed up working hours, and terrible hiring practices came out, Apple, one of Foxconn's biggest customers, said that they are extensively investigating the issue. But wait a minute, there is a big conflict of interest here. If there is an entity that literally helps me keep my costs to a minimum and charge such a fat premium to my customers and maintain my fat operating margins, then why would I fairly investigate them? Now, many people might have rejoiced when JP Morgan came out with a report which said that Apple would move nearly 25% of all its manufacturing outside of China by the end of 2025. This move would primarily replace their manufacturing centers to India, but given these working conditions, do you really think it's worth it? Anyway, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Apple is also fantastic at squeezing money out of you, the consumer. And oftentimes even this has many questionable tactics hidden behind it. For example, take the instance of Apple Care. Apple also sells insurance along with their product just in case something happens so that you can have total peace of mind. But sadly, Apple Care is one of the biggest scams that Apple runs, and you have anything but peace of mind when you happen to buy it, or even if you choose to ignore it and use your product without any insurance. I'll explain how. Let's say you buy a car and you also purchase comprehensive insurance along with that car. So let's say tomorrow an accident occurs, the insurer would pay for the expenses. This insurance would cost nearly 7 to 8% of the total cost of your car. Do you know what percentage Apple charges as a cost of the product for Apple Care? Nearly 20 to 25%, and even after that you do not get any peace of mind. Meaning you buy a MacBook worth 1 lakh rupees, then Apple would charge you an additional 20,000 rupees for the Apple Care Plus coverage. And tomorrow, let's say your MacBook gets water damage, they would charge you an additional 25,900 rupees as a service fee. And the reason this is extremely predatory is because Apple would literally prevent you from getting your repairs done from any other person. Let's say you take your MacBook to some other dealer and get it repaired, then the next software updates that come would ensure that you wouldn't be able to use your device. Your screen would literally go blank, or it would say something like unsupported accessories detected. And another reason that makes Apple Care one of the most predatory insurance programs in the world is the way it is structured as a win-win situation for the company. I'll give you an example that happened with my colleague. His MacBook Pro worth nearly 1.5 lakh rupees got water damage and he did not have any Apple Care. Apple told him that it would cost north of 85,000 rupees to get it fixed. Case 1, he paid 1.5 lakh rupees to get his laptop and an additional 85,000 rupees to get it fixed. Nearly 60% of the device's cost. Extremely inflated, and in most cases people would just consider buying another laptop. Let's say they pay for the repair or buy another laptop, Apple wins. Case 2, he had Apple Care. For his MacBook Pro 16-inch, that would cost almost 37,900 rupees upfront. And when his MacBook got the damage, Apple would once again charge 25,900 as a service fee. So net, Apple would still make north of 65,000 rupees in the form of repairs. And let's say you buy Apple Care and do not need any repairs at the end of the 3-year period, then that's just free money for the company. So the only situation where the customer wins is if he buys a product, doesn't buy Apple Care, and actually uses it so carefully that nothing happens for 3 years. And this extreme inflation in insurance cost is what makes Apple their money. In the second quarter of FY24, they made nearly 26.3% of all revenues from services alone. It is literally the most expensive insurance plan in the consumer tech industry. Let's take the example of my television that I recently bought. I paid just 11% of the total television's cost for a 5-year comprehensive insurance plan where I do not have to shell out a single rupee in case tomorrow there is some sort of an accident. Even if my stupid cousin spills water on my TV, they would fix it for free. Apple also conveniently exploits the rights of its consumers in different countries. For example, in the West, where Apple Care also gives theft protection, where Apple as a company also offers no questions asked return policies, where you could return your phone for simply the reason that you did not like it, Apple refuses to offer these benefits in a country like India where consumer laws are weaker. If you look at Apple's website in India, it says that all sales are final and it is not possible to return or replace a product unless there is a defect. But you know what? You as the end consumer aren't alone. Apple also exploits its B2B consumers just as much. Look at developers, for example. Let's say tomorrow you develop an app that is free to download and customers can pay an optional fee to get the pro or premium version. The fact that you have your app listed on the App Store allows the company to make a flat 30% from your revenue that you charge your customers. You built the app, you maintained it, you advertised it, you got all your customers, and Apple makes 30% from your revenue. In fact, the creator of Fortnite, Epic Games, actually sued Apple for this because they were doing something even worse back then. Because Epic Games told its customers that if you like, you can buy our products and services not from our app which is listed on the App Store, but from our website instead, which would make it cheaper for you. Apple called foul and removed Fortnite from the App Store for simply telling its own customers about an alternative method of purchasing. A long legal battle ensued and Apple was able to win 9 of the 10 counts that it was accused of. The only place where the judge ruled in favor of Epic Games was where Epic Games was allowed to tell its customers that, you know what, you can go and purchase our products and services from other channels. In the past, multiple times Apple has blocked developers from telling their customers of multiple methods to buy their products and services. For Apple, it's like, if you want to be on the App Store, your customers have to make purchases through our channel and give us the 30%. If you open Spotify today on an iPhone and try to subscribe to their premium plan, it would simply say that you cannot subscribe to premium on the app. We know it's not ideal because Spotify refuses to pay the 30% to Apple, and the only way you can purchase Spotify premium on an iPhone is via their website, where you log in with your account, make the payment, and then log in with the same account on the app to access your premium account. The B2B customers of Apple that put up with this practice simply pass on that extra commission cost to the consumer, meaning it costs you 195 rupees a month to access YouTube Premium on an iPhone, but simply 170 rupees a month to access it on an Android or your laptop. And along with that, Apple has some incredibly smart people working for it. Not everything is just messed up. Some things are actually very genius. I'll tell you a story about when I got my iPad. Back then, I wanted to buy the cheapest iPad that money can buy, which was the iPad 9th generation from 2021. It cost 30,000 rupees. Now, this was in 2024, and when I went out to make that purchase, the sales associate said that, do you really want to purchase an iPad that is 3 years old? Don't you think buying the iPad Air makes more sense because it has a newer M1 chip and it is a latest model? And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but there was one problem. The iPad Air was 59,000 rupees, that is almost 2x my budget, and it had a storage of 64 gigabytes only. So the sales associate said that, you know what, if you want more storage, you can get 256 gigabytes. So I went from 30,000 to 75,000, and this is where Apple played its genius masterstroke. The iPad Pro at that time cost only 81,000 rupees, 6,000 rupees more than the iPad Air 256 gigabyte version. And the iPad Pro started at 128 gigabytes. So this is what my brain told me. I am getting the latest and the greatest iPad, and I'm getting a 128 gigabyte version. So it's like the perfect compromise. Because let's face it, if the iPad Pro started at 81,000 rupees for 64 gigabytes and the next variant was 128 or even 256, I would not consider upgrading. For me, a 75,000 rupee 256 gigabyte iPad would make way more sense than a 64 gigabyte iPad, even if it was the iPad Pro. But Apple tactfully started the storage for the iPad Pro at 128 gigabytes and intentionally kept the difference between the iPad Air 256 and the Pro at just 6,000 rupees. So I started at 30,000 rupees, and here I was spending almost 81,000 rupees, and the accessories would follow. I would require a screen protector, a case, probably the pencil, and so on. Apple is also notorious for restricting the consumer's freedom of choice. For example, if you buy a fantastic Windows PC, it would last you easily 3 to 5 years. And from this point on, you could easily upgrade its RAM and its storage. To upgrade from a 16 gigabyte RAM to a 32 gigabyte RAM, it would not cost you more than 3 to 5,000 rupees depending on the brand. However, when you purchase a laptop from Apple, they would solder the RAM, the CPU and the GPU into one integrated chip. This mechanism prevents you from configuring or upgrading your laptop as time passes. So you are forced to purchase a new laptop when the time is due. And while selling the laptop to you, Apple would say, you know what, maybe 8 gigabytes of RAM may not be enough, you should go for 16. And they would charge you a whopping 20,000 rupees additionally for the RAM upgrade. Similarly, they charge you north of 40,000 rupees to go from a 512 gigabyte storage to 1 terabyte. But the bigger question is, why do we as consumers ignore all of this? And what is the solution? Because honestly, using their products is a breeze. Apple imposes a very heavy switching cost on the end consumer. Once you're into the ecosystem, it's very difficult to get out. If you have the laptop, the phone and the AirPods, you are good for life. You are not going to switch to any other operating system ever. Because if you copy something on your iPhone and paste it on your Mac, it would happen seamlessly without any setup. If you were playing music on your Mac, you shut it down and then start using your phone, your AirPods automatically seamlessly switch to your phone. Because once you have entered that ecosystem and you are deep into it, there is no way that your next laptop would be a Windows or your next phone would be an Android, or your next pair of earphones would not be AirPods. And secondly, the shallow thing about society is that their products just look beautiful. They feel beautiful. When you open your new iPhone or your MacBook, that perfect slide, that new fragrance of your device, how it feels in your hand, all of that is extremely premium. If you look at the edges of an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, or even the shapes of the icons on all of these devices, you would see total consistency. All of them are exactly the same, and that is because this is a shape called a squircle, which is patented by Apple. They own the rights to this shape. It is not a rounded square. So this total and end-to-end premiumization of their brand and their product somewhere makes us overlook everything that they do as a company. Honestly, when I look at society, I just feel like manufacturing is one of the biggest ironies of it, and somewhere marketing is the drug that makes us overlook it. Anyway, I for one really think that Apple needs to face some consequences for its anti-competitive behavior and the way it treats labor in multiple countries. We need stronger labor laws. We need stronger laws around preventing monopolies in the world. How do you think we can solve this problem? Let me know in the comments and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.